on, guys? Welcome back to the second episode of Canadian Beef, your Canadian fitness podcast where we talk to cool people and we drink maple syrup and we get huge. Today, we're joined by my co-host, Paul Martin, and we got a great guest today, Ron Harris from MD. How's it going, Ron? How's it going, Paul?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's an honor, Ron. I'm very happy to have Ron on here. I was telling Ron before this started that he's kind of one of my role models or one of my idols, the guy that I look up to, because he's been a journalist in this thing for years, right? And
30.
No, you have. You've been a journalist.
30 years, yeah.
A bodybuilding journalist, and I find that the coolest thing because one, it's a totally niche thing. I'm assuming, Ron, it's something you do on the side, but you totally love it. And you definitely have a passion for bodybuilding, so, and you're a competitive bodybuilder, so you do it all, right? And it's just inspirational.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Definitely. So, Ron,
yeah,
we were talking about competing prior to starting this podcast. Did you want to tell the folks what we were talking about, or?
Well, you asked me if I was. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of questions if I'm going to compete again, just because this summer I did get back. I didn't get into full contest condition, but I got about 85%. And I told people I was peaking for the Muscle Vodka pool party at the day after the Tampa Pro. And that was kind of true. It was just a date, something I set in my head, because I don't know about you guys, but I can't be very strict with my diet, like 100% strict, without an actual target, something I need to be in shape for on a given day, a very specific day. And even though I wasn't dieting the way I would if I was competing, I wasn't dieting 100%, but I got close enough where I could see how I was looking. Because, in the off season, it's hard when you're carrying fat and water to see what you really look like. I don't even like to practice posing until I'm in pretty decent condition, because you're not really seeing anything happen. It's just kind of blobs, So I said, if I can find a show maybe next year that's at least 8 weeks after anything I have to cover for MD, so there's no conflict where I'm not, trying to stuff my face with chicken breasts while I'm supposed to be taking pictures of the competitors and interviewing. That's my job. That's what pays the bills, supports my family and everything. So competing, I loved. I did it for 24 years. If I never compete again, I did 30 shows in 24 years. I met tons of people, had amazing experiences. So no regrets. The only thing I'm missing is that little thing you got after your card on the Instagram, Robin, IFBB Pro. And so many guys I've beaten over the years are pros now. So many. I'm like, man, he's a pro and I'm not a pro. Anyway. Yeah.
What about the NPC North Americans, Ron? Or you can do the Masters Collegiate, right?
Yeah, I could do There's so many options now. I would do Masters, obviously. I know I'm realistic. I know what I look like. I'm not delusional. I know in any open USA Nationals North American, I'll get my ass handed to me, because that's like where Nick Walker turned pro last year, the North American. So you have people at that level competing. But yeah, there's master shows. I would do a Masters. I'm over 50. So luckily we do break it down. I wouldn't have to do over 35 or 40. I could do over 50 with the really old people like me.
Yeah,
is that something that you still want to get? Is that IFBB Pro card? Is that something that you're still, because you can get it as a 50, you can get it even as a 60 or a 70,
70. Maybe I'll wait till 70. Yeah. It just feels like unfinished business. And because I've been around so long and I know so many people, pretty much everyone I know, everyone who started out competing with me, they're all pros now, like almost every single one of them, even people who they're not very good. I know I sound like a dick, but they're not very good. They're never going to do anything as a pro. I would never do anything as a pro. I know I wouldn't be a good pro, but it's just like I've heard it compared to like a college degree. It's like you study, put all that work in. Don't you want your degree for it?
I call it an honorary doctorate.
You go. Yeah.
Definitely. You've been in the game for a long time. You love it. You've been doing it. My goal is to get a pro card, knock on wood, if I can still do it at 60 or 70.
How old are you now? How old are you now, Paul?
I'm 40. I just started competing in the Masters division.
Okay.
So But
you don't need to wait till you're 70, Paul. Come on, don't be ridiculous.
oh, I'm just, you know what? The pro card's not an actual goal, but it's something you shoot for, right? Just in case you never know. And if you're in a master's division, it's a different ball game.
Yeah, I mean, Robin turned pro. What, you were 12, weren't you when you turned pro?
I was 26.
26,
No, sorry,
yeah.
I was 25.
25, and then you placed top 10 in the pro show. Like, it was the same day, wasn't it? The next day.
It was the same night.
Same night, yeah. Wow, that was nuts. Toronto.
Yeah.
I missed the Toronto Pro. Man, come on, Toronto. What's going on with you guys?
I hope they have it this year. I mean, they are gearing up for it this year.
Oh.
We'll see if it happens or not. It's supposed to be in November, December right now, but they keep pushing it back, and I'm not like fully getting my hopes up just because there's a lot of clients that want to do that show, and I'm like, maybe we should aim for something that's gonna happen for sure, versus like we get our hopes up and then we get really upset last minute when they cancel it. If they cancel it, I don't know, but we'll see. Yeah. Great show though, man. I'm really hoping to have it again, because I always love the Toronto Pro. It's in my hometown, so it's always been one of those shows that I love, right? And
I love the setup. Ron Haché and his crew, they have a hotel there. There's a convention center. You got the expo, the state. It's just all so convenient, so well run. Toronto is very clean. People are polite. There are more homeless people than I thought there would be, but still, it's a great city. So I hope you guys do. I was talking to a couple guys like Simon Lau from Muscle Insider and what's his name? Kent. He's a photographer. So I was asking them, what do you guys think? And they weren't very optimistic about it, about the show happening this year. But hopefully.
We'll see, right?
Yeah.
Really?
I want to ask you, Ron, so far in your competitive career, what's been your highlight? What's been the one, thing that you're like, oh, that was awesome?
I would say it was not the last show I did, but the one that was 2 weeks before that. So July 2013, I did the Team Universe. It was still called Team Universe. Now they just call it Universe. And over 40, that was the last year that they just had, everyone over 40 was one group. So there were 25 of us. The lightest guy in the class was 130 pounds. The heaviest guy was 280 pounds. And so it was it was like a pro show. It was just all shapes and sizes. And the winner was Malcolm Marshall. He was 280. He was the 280 pounder. And I got 5th place. And out of the 4 guys that beat me, 3 of them were pros either by the end of the night or by the end of that month at the Masters. So it was a really good, it was the toughest lineup I ever stood on stage with. And I held my own. A few of the people I beat in that show, they're pros now. And it was a good look. I was very happy with the condition. Could have been better, but it was definitely a high point. Definitely a high point.
Was that your best showing, you think?
Best. I mean, I've won a couple shows over the years, and I've been second many times. But this was definitely toughest level of competition I was ever on stage with. So I still have the pictures. I could say, wow, I was up there with that guy. He's done 10 pro shows now. He's done 12 pro shows now. It was cool. I was like 205 at that show. 2 weeks later, I was 201. I got my glutes and hams in. I took a diuretic and I was all crispy and dry, but flat. I was never a massive guy. So I tried to play the condition game, but when you do that, especially if you suck out all the water, things can go sideways. You can look even smaller.
Size, yeah.
Speaking of conditioning, sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, sorry, Robin. I didn't know I was speaking over you. The class size, how big was that with all these guys? Was it like 80 or 40?
No. Because it was over 40. It wasn't a master show. It was a Team Universe.
Okay.
So they had an open division with all the men's and women's weight classes. They had all the divisions, but we're just talking about bodybuilding now. So for bodybuilding, they did 35 and over and 40 and over. I don't think they had 50 and over. So the year after I did it, they broke everything up into weight classes. So you didn't have to be, up there with somebody who outweighed you by 50 pounds or 70 pounds. And that's actually the show. So Derek Upshaw turned pro as a Masters at that show the year after. I don't know if you know who he is. The year after him was John Meadows. He won it.
Wow.
Masters at Team U. And then the year after him, his protege, Josh Wade, who's still competing. He won it. So it's a decent show. It's had some really good competitors over the years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I wanted to ask you, Ron, what's your opinion on this controversy about changing the way that bodybuilding standards are judged after some like recent events happened, unfortunate recent events that have been tied to diuretic use or just overall like pushing the conditioning in bodybuilding? Do you think that judging should change, or do you think that it's impossible to change judging? Impossible to change
judging. I've judged. I don't know if you guys have judged, but you know, I said this. I went live on the MD YouTube last week. Did a whole. Oh, we got a whole discussion going because you get these people. I sit right behind the judges at every show, and I don't know how they do it, honestly, because sometimes you get like three guys that are. We'll talk about Texas later. Three guys, each one of them is a rightful winner. What do? How do you pick a winner? You can't say it's a three-way tie. They're all massive. They all have really good shape and structure. What do you start looking at? You have to look at conditioning. And conditioning is the hallmark of very hard work and suffering. Diuretics are the polish, the final polish on it. You have to get very lean. If you don't get all the body fat off, all the diuretics in the world aren't going to do much for you. You know, you're still going to be smooth. You're still going to have the body fat. Now you got flat muscles. It's not a good look. I applaud I'm glad that they want to do something. I think the solution doesn't lie in changing the judging. It's probably just education. I think the athletes have to take a certain level of responsibility. We do pay these coaches. I never did, but you know, you're paying these coaches top dollar and trusting them to have all the answers and to keep you safe. But the bottom line is their job is to help you win. You know, why do you hire a coach? We know how to eat. We know it's chicken breasts and rice and cut your carbs and do some cardio. It's not rocket science. It's the chemicals. The chemical aspect of it is where things get really complex and you need a guide. But at the same time, you're putting your faith and your trust in someone who has no medical training. And I've talked to doctors and registered nurses, and they cannot believe that bodybuilders use diuretics as haphazardly as we do. They said, are you crazy? You know, we do it in a clinical setting. We're monitoring the heart rate and the blood pressure and all this all the time. And you guys are just like popping them in a hotel room, going to sleep and hoping for the best.
I find it interesting because in like a general population, some people are prescribed Lasix and they take 40 milligrams of Lasix every single day of their life. Yeah. But obviously that's a completely different scenario because that person has a lot of water, they have a lot of body fat, you know, there's other conditions, there's a lot of variables there. When you're talking about like bodybuilding and like pushing that condition, you're already in a depleted state. There's already some type of water manipulation. A lot of coaches will drop water, for example. And so you're not only dehydrating yourself by dropping the water, but now you're adding diuretics. There's so many variables that diuretics can play. But I think you're right. You hit it completely nail on the head there, where the most important thing that we can do as athletes or coaches or, you know, whoever we are, influencers, right? We have to talk about the fact that the diuretic use is not the thing that's going to get you that win. It's the work. It's that being conditioned before you take the diuretic, if you need a diuretic at all. I think diuretics are probably one of the most overused drugs, if not the most overused drug in contest prep. So I think it's like opening up that discussion, people being like honest about their use, you know, whether it's good or bad, because then other people that are maybe less educated can watch videos or read about it and understand that, hey, I really don't need this diuretic to be my best on stage. And hey, if I use a little bit, then that's more than enough. And we don't need to like go overboard with it.
Yeah, let me ask you, Paul, you just competed, right?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, now I was watching, I follow you, you're big, what is it, big deal on Instagram?
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of a big deal, is that what it is?
That's a kind of a big deal, 81.
He's not a big deal, he's a kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. You know, I'm saying you were so lean leading into the show. If I was your coach, I wouldn't have even suggested a diuretic. If you would ask me, should I use a diuretic? I said, no, absolutely not. You don't need it. It's just going to make you look worse. So I don't know if you're comfortable saying, did you use one anyway?
So Ron, that's a good question. I actually was holding a bunch of water. So a couple things happened prior to the show. I was on antibiotics, and because I had an infection, so I had to take antibiotics prior to I was under a great deal of stress with, trying to manage just work and life and everything this year. I found like physiologically things weren't clicking, and I was really lean. So the other thing was that the water just wasn't going away. So to answer your story, yeah, I popped a quarter diazide, hit stage, and I was still very watery. I was actually surprised. To be honest, I've been leaner. I'm sure I've been leaner than that look. I've been significantly leaner because I know by the feel, when you have that death feel. And I'm getting it now because I'm competing again in 2 weeks, 2.5.
Yeah.
So I know I'm definitely leaner than I was going into this show. And I think that at this point, I've started my water load differently. Or not water load, but I'm manipulating my water a little bit differently, and I'm making sure my body adjusts to the fluid intake I have. And I'm getting drier and drier by the day. So I think it's little mistakes in conjunction with like different things that happen. But typically I wouldn't use a diuretic if I was that lean. I have in the past. I've used like these crazy protocols, to be honest with you, that just didn't seem effective. Like aldactone. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this protocol where you use aldactone leading up to like a diazide, and you use it like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You drop the aldactone on Friday, you use a quarter diazide, and then get on stage. That was one that was really popular with the coaches at one point, right? And it's a very, very dangerous protocol when you think of it.
Yeah, why would anybody need to be on diuretics for? I've heard, now we're all this unfortunate with that female competitor, the pro passing away in Alicante, Spain. There's been this deluge of women coming out saying, here's the protocol that so-and-so had me on, or this coach had me on. And I'm seeing women it seems like women are the ones that are being given the most extreme diuretic protocols. 10 days out from a show, they're starting on aldactone. Why would anybody need to be on diuretics for 10 days? To me, that's insanity.
When your aldosterone just taper off, like Robin, you probably would, like your aldosterone, you would adjust, and it would be counterintuitive at that point. You're on aldactone for too long. And if you're a male on aldactone for a long time, you're just losing muscle, right?
Yeah.
I've never used aldactone personally, and I don't think any male competitor should use aldactone. It is a more mild diuretic compared to like Lasix or Diazide or things like that. But first of all, yeah, there's no reason to be using it. Well, actually, with aldactone, it's a little bit different because the half-life is much longer. So that's why people would use it, because you don't see as quick of a water drop as you would with like a Diazide or a Lasix. It does take about 72 hours to start flushing water out with aldactone. But aldactone for men is a really bad idea because it's an anti-androgen. So a lot of that that you're looking for, it's going to kind of blunt some of that. So maybe it makes sense for like I don't want to say a bikini girl because maybe they don't need diuretics at all, but that's like, it's so honestly case dependent. It depends on the person. And I don't think diuretics are necessarily harmful if they're not abused, but that's like anything, like any performance enhancing drug or any drug in general. It's like maybe it has a place for this individual, but it really does depend on the individual. It depends on the amount of that drug that you're using. And it really, really matters, like, that person's history as well, right? So.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Have Rob and I sent you the link. And Ron, have you seen or participated in those Swiss forums? SWIS? Yeah, you haven't seen? So it's basically a conference. They had Meadows on 2018. I subscribed to the 2018. I bought the videos. Actually, I won it at a show, which is awesome. But it's just videos they've compiled of different presentations. Doctors speak to diuretics, steroids, training, physiology, all types of things related to bodybuilding, powerlifting, and strength sports, and physique sports. So it's super interesting, but they have a anabolic steroid panel. That's the link I sent you. We can't, I'd love to show it right now, but we can't because apparently there's some legalities. Rick Collins is on the panel. Rick, obviously Ron knows who Rick Collins.
Yeah, of course.
Have you ever had Rick? Anyways, I'll ask you this after, but Rick's the big steroid lawyer. But they talk about diuretics, and they speak to the fact that one presenter was actually on Lasix because he had heart failure. So he was on Lasix sustainably. I just, I think it's a slippery slope when we say it's safe, because even if used properly and you have a pre-existing condition, or like you're extremely dehydrated or your potassium levels are off, it could be a recipe for disaster.
Well, obviously, but you know, the one thing about diuretics that it's makes them, there's this idea that they pull the water up from under the skin selectively. And that's just not true.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a pharmacologist, but even I know it takes the water from everywhere. You're pissing water out from your muscles, from your organs, it's all the water in your body. It's not just the water under your glutes or the water under your abs, as people would, wishful thinking, they believe it to be. It's not true at all. So it's fine if you're this massive guy with tons of round, bubbly muscle. If you're a smaller person, if you don't have a lot of muscle and not that full look, it's going to make you really flat. It's going to make you look stringy. Your condition will be better, sure, because now you have that crispy look. Like everyone loves when they're dieting. The last few weeks, you wake up first thing in the morning, take a piss, and then go look in the mirror. And man, everything's all tight, and you can see all the little intercosta, serratus, and all this crap. Then you eat breakfast, and it blurs out. But yeah, I wish there was a safe drug that would just take the water out from under the skin. But to my knowledge, there's nothing like that.
Actually, that's interesting, because the only thing that actually will do that to a certain degree, if there's some sort of imbalance, it would be potassium. So the potassium and sodium balance is kind of the one thing that can manipulate intracellular and extracellular fluid. Nothing else can really manipulate that except for those electrolytes. So,
but you need a specific protocol to manipulate those electrolytes, which is hard as hell to manage, right? Who's the chemist, Amin Ali? That's the guy, right? Yeah. Who prepped he prepped King Kamali and a couple of other guys. Like when I listen to his protocol, I think, man, that can't be safe. That can't.
Yeah, so I did one of his protocols for 2017. I hired him actually, and the only thing that I maybe wasn't happy with, because I did win the show, was the fact that he claimed to have helped me win my pro card, but I didn't work with him for my pro card. It was another show prior to the pro card the year before. So with that being said, I did follow one of his protocols, and it was very extreme, and it did have me a little bit whoa, what the heck is going on? I wasn't really sure of what was going to happen because of the drastic changes in my body. It was a 10-pound gain of water, and then I lost 15 pounds of water. It was really, really crazy. So I guess from that experience, what it taught me was that doing that kind of stuff is not necessary at all. So maybe you can win a show like that, but at the same time, it's I can also win a show doing no diuretics. So, I think at the end of the day, the most important thing to realize is that nothing is going to change the fact that if you're not ready for the show, you're not going to win that show. And if you do choose to take a diuretic, the key word being choose to, no one can force you to take a diuretic. So it is always a choice. But if you choose to take a diuretic, that's on you. And if it does make you better and you get a good result, then that's fantastic. But if you get worse, then that was your choice, because you were, making that choice, whether you get 1% better or 1% worse, that is the scenario where it can go either way. So I think, diuretic use in bodybuilding is one of those things that it won't go away, but it will get better as we open up the discussion and talk more about it.
We need discussions on all these types of things. That's why I spoke to the Swiss forums, and that's why I talked about it, so people can check that out and kind of educate themselves. I think we need some education out there, and we need to have conversations. Obviously not at a bodybuilding show, when you're interviewing professional bodybuilders, but we need a forum outside of bodybuilding, like these podcasts, so we can talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I feel one of the things, without going on about this too much, I feel one of the things that kind of, hindered our ability to learn is that there's a lot of sound bites going around. So certain things all you need is a quarter diazide. That is just a thing that someone will hear and then they'll just connect to. And then that'll be the thing that they just go forward with. But, I think a real discussion and being educated about something takes, an in-depth approach where you have to actually sit down and actually decipher what's going on, because you can hear one person talk about the science of it, but then how do I actually translate that into an individual? That takes experience, and that just takes time, really. But anyways, with that being said, Ron, you're at the Tampa. You were at the Texas Pro too, right?
No, I didn't go to Texas. I watched the live stream, but I wasn't there.
Yeah.
You were at Tampa.
What do you think about these last like 3 shows, like the Tampa, the Texas, and the Europa? Like those were some good shows, right?
Yeah, I knew they would be, because they were the last chances for people to qualify for the Olympia. So typically that's when people either they were waiting and waiting, like Kukla waited. He put all his eggs in that one basket. That's, hoping he would win that, believing he would win that, and he almost won that, except for this pesky Canadian, Ian Valliere, beat him. But yeah, I knew the lineups would be packed and it would be good quality. They always are. Every time that it's crunch time to get your last qualification for the Olympia. But I was very impressed with the lineups. Chicago, Tampa, the last 2 I was at were both very good shows.
Phil
Clayhar,
yeah, man, what a back. From the back, that guy smoked. I don't care what anyone says. That was a back shot I've never fucking seen.
Yeah, he's definitely made a name for himself this season. 47 years old.
47.
I think he just started competing as a pro. He only turned pro like 3 years ago, I believe. 3-4 years at the most. And I saw him, he's a Florida guy. So I saw him at the Tampa the first year. He didn't get any look at all. Last call out. Even at the Chicago Pro, he was in the third call out. He didn't look that much worse than he looked in Tampa and Texas. Just for whatever reason, he wasn't getting a good look, but he just kept going and sharpening up. And that's what you do. You can't just complain. I see all these people, amateurs, pros, the day after a show, they'll bitch and moan on social media. They'll put up, look at, this is the guy that beat me. Who do you think wins this shot? And they put their best pose up against the other guy's worst pose. And, they're looking for sympathy. They're looking for validation. But I'm like, I wish I could message them all and say, take that shit down. You look like a crybaby. The judges, you're going to, especially as a pro, chances are, even as an amateur, I'm sure if you're competing in Toronto, you see the same judges at most of the shows. There's not that many judges. It's the same thing in the pros. So they're humans. They're going to look at Instagram and, wow, this is a guy that said the judges are idiots. It's all political. The judges are blind, okay, if it's close between this guy and another guy, and I'm a judge and I've been reading that, if it's a coin toss, I'm not picking that guy. So I'm saying, oh, well, he's a jerk anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's like a pet peeve.
The blink effect, because in my opinion, the blink effect is so important in bodybuilding. What I mean by that is like that subconscious judging that everybody does. It's human nature, right? It's like instantly, as soon as someone walks on stage, you have, created a judgment about them, whether they look at you and smile, whether they look down, whether they're conditioned, like all of these things. It's like boom, boom, boom. And you do the same thing on social media. So I agree with you. It's like, it's such the wrong tone. Bodybuilding is about bettering yourself. It's not so much about comparing yourself to other people. That's the judge's job. That's not your job as an athlete. Your job as an athlete is to improve yourself. It doesn't matter who shows up, because you can't control that. All you can control is your attitude, your energy, and your effort. And that's it.
Yeah. And what makes matters worse is there's all these internet trolls now that are, reinforcing this bullshit. Ron, I want to ask, because this Ian Valliere controversy, you brought it up. Well, you brought up Ian going into, several shows and Kuklo and, putting his eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that in the 90s, guys would compete a lot, and that was great for the sport. I think it creates, it's like Walmart, right? It fosters competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's got to up their game because the best dude's going into every show.
Right.
Now, a lot of people are complaining that Ian shouldn't have competed because he already won that top spot, qualified for the Olympia. Now he's stealing it from other guys. Actually, Robin, I want to hear your take too. We talked about this briefly last time, but not on the podcast, off the record. So, Ron, as a professional journalist, bodybuilding journalist, what do you think?
Well, we actually had this conversation, Milos, myself, and Kareth Baggio, because Kareth Baggio was going to go on to do Texas, even though he had won the Tampa 212.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a few days later. He's like, well, I'm already in shape. Why not go win another show? But he felt badly. He says, well, I might be taking away someone's Olympia qualification. I don't want to do that. And Milos said, they wouldn't care if it was you. Trust me, they wouldn't care if they were taking away from you. It's every man for himself. And if they can't beat you, why do they? It's not like everybody deserves to go to Mr. Olympia. You don't have any, there's no entitlement. There's no God-given right that, well, you're a good pro, you should be in the Olympia. No, you have to earn your way there. If you can't beat the people that are winning the shows, you don't deserve to go. You can't, you didn't get that qualification. You could say, well, Ian, he already had the qualification. Why do you need to do that? He wanted to put a stamp on it. I think he wanted to show that he had leveled up. He had improved, and he wanted to see if he wanted to know if he was capable of beating Steve Kukla. So if he had sat out Texas, he wouldn't have found out until the Olympia, because Steve would have won the Texas show and they would have faced off the Olympia. But, you know, kudos to Ian, because this is a professional sport. It's every man for himself. It's not a team sport. Why not win as many shows as you can, compete as much as you can? I wouldn't worry about the next guy, because I know he's not worried about me. Yeah. They're not. So anyone that you know wants to slam Ian for doing that, they just don't understand the reality of it. It's not like everybody just deserves, oh, I really want my favorite guy to be in Olympia. Well, then let him qualify.
No one's entitled to anything.
No one is entitled to anything. Unless you won the Olympia, then you are entitled to compete in the Olympia whenever you want. Everyone else,
sure,
you have to earn your way there.
That's why we have points. It's like golf. It's like the PGA. There are points for a reason, you know.
Yeah.
But Ian's a guy with a ton of integrity, professional integrity. Yeah. So he's the last guy I'd be shitting on for professional integrity and doing something like that. I mean, he's a professional, thick and thin. So I don't know. It seems like an odd controversy.
I could see it if it's. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say. I think it's the most intelligent approach. Like, I completely agree with you, Ron, that, you know, Ian has now set the standard for competitive athletes in ICB, that just because you win a show and get your Olympia qualification does not let you off the hook. Because if you want to be Mr. Olympia, you have to beat guys that have placed, you know, in that top 5 at some point. So whether you beat them along the road, you know, it's like, hey, you know, if you're like a sprinter trying to get to the Olympics, would you not compete throughout the year so that you can learn how to peak, and so you can learn how to beat the athletes that you're going to eventually, you're building momentum, you're learning your craft, you're getting exposure, you're making money. It's like you could just go on and on about all the pros. And what's the con? The only con is that if you did not win, that's the only con, but you're competing anyways. So whether you get, you know, first place there, and then you get a 5th place at the Olympia Arnold, or whether you get a 2nd place there, and then you get a 6th place at the Olympia Arnold, you're still getting better. And that's what it's all about. So I don't know. I thought the controversy was kind of weird, to be honest.
Yeah. You know, I talked to a lot of pros, and one regret that comes up fairly often with some of them anyway is, I wish I had competed more. I wish I'd done more shows. Like, a lot of them would just do the Olympia every year, and they look back and say, maybe I should have done some more shows, because, you know, Dexter had this very long career, but average pro career, 6 to 10 years, if you're lucky. It's not a long pro career, and that's your job technically. So why wouldn't you do as many shows? You know, Milos and those guys in the 90s, Flex, Vince Taylor, Chris Cormier, you look at their contest history, sometimes they would do 10 shows a year. There would be a Grand Prix tour. They would hit, you know, 6 shows in 4 weeks or something like that. And that was just one little batch, in addition to the Arnold, the Olympia, the Ironman, the Night of Champions. That was their job. I applaud that, because I think guys today don't compete enough. You know, I guess they don't have to, because social media makes them relevant all the time, and it's not like they have to compete, but they're fans. They want to. If you're a fan of Robbins, when's the last time you competed, for God's sake?
Well, I competed 6 weeks ago at the Puerto Rico Pro, and the reason why I didn't compete again was because I got 8th place. Now, if I had gotten like a top 3 or top 5, I would have competed again. Now, that's the difference, I think, is that if you're close enough or ready to win a show, then competing again, it makes sense. But if you're going to place outside the top 5, like in 8th place, like myself, that just tells you, the judges are telling you that you have to go back to work and improve before you get back on stage. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to continue competing if I'm not going to get to that top 3, top 5, or win a show. To me, it's like win or go get better, right? So I don't see winning as something that I can do this year. I have to go back and improve before I compete again. But if you're good enough, if you're up there, if you're getting a 2nd place and then you call it quits, then maybe you're doing yourself a disservice, because you could get better for that next show and edge somebody out. But competing a lot is challenging. I think maybe that's one of the biggest kind of things that we deal with as bodybuilders, is that we put like so much kind of emphasis into that, the first show we do. It's like, if I don't win that first show, like my life is over. But then you realize it's like, that was just one show, and there's like 10 more shows. If you compete early in the year, especially, you could even take time and you could improve, and then you can come back later in the year. It's not like it has to be like an end all be all. And that's kind of how my mind shift has changed, because the most I've done in a year is 2 shows. And that's not very much compared to like what we're seeing now, like especially this year with some of the guys competing in like 5 or 6 shows. That's a lot. It's hard to do. Mentally, it's hard to do. Physically, it's hard to do. So, I think once you get yourself to that spot where you're knocking on the door of a pro win, then you have like a duty almost to continue competing until you get there. Because it's not going to last forever. Like, your window of being a pro show winner is small. So if you go and you win 1 show, and then you go and you come back the next year, you might have lost your window. You could have won maybe 2 or 3 shows like Ian did, and then come back with that momentum and, really peak, got the bang for your buck, so it depends on the scenario. It definitely depends.
The doors.
If I had been your advisor, Robin, I would not have told, if you had come to me, or if I was your coach, I would have said, first of all, answer me this. Did you look as good as you could have in Puerto Rico, or do you think you could have been tighter? Was it the best you felt you could have looked at that show, for one thing?
At the finals, I was good enough for 5th place, because I was in 5th place in the finals. I was 11th place at prejudging, so okay. I ended up with an 8th.
So what I would have said to you is, you did great. You did pretty good at this show. You don't always have to win. I would say, let's get some more stage time. Let's get some more experience with the peaking. Let's pick another show, maybe 2 shows if we have them in the next month. Hit those, then go into your off season, because like I said, you're still young and everything, but every bodybuilder is like a pec tear away from it all being over, basically, or a kidney blowout, or anything can happen to anybody at any point. So I would have urged you to do at least 1 more show that was coming up, because I think was that before or after New York?
It was after New York. That was 4 weeks before Tampa.
Okay. I mean, I would have told you to do Tampa.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I had honestly considered it. I'll tell you, Ron, like, this show, because I cut myself, I was kind of in my head. The head judge actually came up to me backstage after, and he was like, well, I don't know what you did between prejudging and finals, but I had you in 5th. But he did say that he would like to see me fill out my back, to fill out my frame in general. He told me not to rush. He said, take your time and come back better. And I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So because I had myself, it was like, this is what I think I need to improve on. And then he told me that. I took that and ran with it. If I did have an advisor like yourself and you said, hey, maybe we should go into Tampa, I'd say, heck yes, let's do it. But at the same time, I'm also realistic, and I know, I'm 28 right now. My goal is to win a pro show by 30.
Yeah.
I still need to improve. So.
That's great. I really think there's something to be said about competing more. You learn so much. You gain confidence. You just gain more polish and professionalism just from being up there and going through it another time and another time. And the peaking, I think every time you peak for a show, you learn something new about how your body responds to this or that. It's just, it's when you compete very infrequently, I think it's more challenging to get it right, because it's been, some of these guys go like 2 years between shows, 3 years between shows. Yeah. To me, that's outrageous. I don't know why they would even entertain that idea.
Do you think
I'm gonna do
like Dexter was so good at his craft? Like, Dexter was Mr. Consistency, right? Do you think because in the 90s, when Dexter started out, he was competing a lot, and then he consistently competed quite a bit, actually. So Dexter was one of those guys who knew how to peak every time.
He did. He also had a very, very gifted metabolism, as I think everybody knows.
Yeah, so I've heard.
His off-season condition was pretty damn good. I never saw him out of shape. To me, I would never see him where he looked like he couldn't be ready in like 6 weeks if he really wanted to. He was always fairly close. So I don't think it took a huge toll on him physically and mentally to get into contest condition the way it probably did for most other people. But yeah, he did a lot of shows. I think he did 70 or more pro shows in his career. And he won. Did he get 30? I think he got. I think he got the even 30.
At the Olympia, that was a big a landmark, I guess. He competed times. The most shows, most pro shows out of anyone, right?
Most pro wins of anybody. No one who's going to beat that.
And you know what makes that possible is low or no diuretic use too. Because then it's possible to continue competing for a long time like that. Because we know that with like hardcore diuretic use, we're going to run into kidney problems. So,
And
you have to maintain your health if you want to compete a lot. That's
absolutely.
Yeah, smart lifting too. I mean, if you lift like a power lifter every day or a power bodybuilder, Ron and I both have no triceps, right, Ron?
Well, I mean, it's small, but it's there. I do have one, but
we have a partial tricep.
Yeah.
And did you get it operated?
I was investigating it because, like I said, until you get lean, really lean, you can't see everything you want to see.
Yeah.
So I was trying to figure out, it either retracted, so they reattached it. It was never, I always had, this arm was always better anyway, but this is the one I tore in 2011. And I did get it reattached 4 weeks later, but I think they didn't reattach it all the way down. They did at the elbow, at the outside of the elbow, but I see a big gap up here that I don't remember being that bad before.
I have it too, Ron. It made the tricep kind of nice. You can't see because it's blurry, but right here it's missing. Right.
I mean,
small.
I have a question then. If you tear one of your tricep heads, does that mean that it's no longer a tricep, it's now a bicep?
What if you don't get it reattached?
Is it then a unicep? Or like
is this like if a tree falls in the woods, Robin? Is this a philosophical question? No, but what's funny though, and Ron could probably attest to this, like even prior to surgery, I was still, I don't know if Ron was stupid enough, but I was still lifting. Like I could still lift weight without the tray. Yeah, I was an idiot.
Well, mine was torn. It was off, so I couldn't.
Mine was off, but
I was still lifting with the other side, and I was still doing legs, and anything I could still do, I was still doing. I have pictures where it's in the cast, and I'm squatting. I'm balancing with one arm on my shoulders.
Yeah,
but, yeah. I never stopped. I never missed.
I
missed 2 days after each surgery because I did my tricep first, and then 4 weeks after that, I went in and they did it's called a decompression inside the shoulder to make a little more room.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny. I did the same thing because I read some research on training unilaterally to bring up the other side, and I think I got out of surgery and they gave me like some kind of narcotic, some kind of painkiller that was really good. And I was allowed to drive. You're not allowed to drive for insurance purposes. So I walked to the gym high as a kite.
Yeah.
It was after the Arnold's. I think it must have been April, May, and it was cold enough. And I couldn't put a coat on because I was that big, but I couldn't, So I just walked in a shirt, but I was super high from the medication. So I walked to the gym, have a full training session, and I walk back and the drugs have worn off. And I'm like, Jesus, it's like winter out here.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have real winter.
Yeah, Canadian beef.
We're not too. Boston, we have some serious winter too. We're not that far behind.
Boston's pretty nice. One of the most beautiful cities. We had Jose Raymond on the other podcast I was on, and I was talking to him about how brilliant of a city it was. I guess Jose never parties, but I went out when I was younger and partied in Boston, and the people are just, I've never been anywhere. I think the people are great over there.
Me too. I think so too. I would never live anywhere else ever again.
Yeah.
I lived in LA for 10 years from 91 to 2000. I would never go. You couldn't pay me to live in LA right now.
Oh yeah, no. Well, Toronto's pretty, sorry, Robin, but you guys had the bad end of the stick.
Why? Why is that?
Wow, you guys have been shut down forever.
Oh, well, that's why I moved to BC, and then I was in Tampa for 5-6 weeks before the show.
True, yeah. Everybody, all Canadians are moving to Tampa, right? I think is Ian stationed down there now for the Olympia with Chris?
I think he was just like for the show, but I think he's back now.
Is he back with Chris? Yeah.
He was down for Tampa, and then he stayed down for Texas, obviously, and then
I haven't seen him at the gym lately.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, Ron, what do you think the biggest difference is between U.S. bodybuilding and Canadian bodybuilding? Because you've been exposed to both.
I don't think there's much of a difference. I really don't. I mean, I often say to myself, if I had to live in any other country in the world where I wouldn't feel like it was quote unquote so foreign, I would go to Canada because, the money's different. There's still, obviously there are different things, and you have that metric, you still use the metric system, right? Like kilometers and kilograms and stuff.
Kilometers, yeah.
Instead of miles and, but it's, I don't think there's much of a difference. I think you guys are more polite. I think you work harder because there's less opportunity to turn professional.
Yeah.
It's still much harder to turn pro in Canada than it is in the US. I actually get disgusted sometimes at how easy it is, especially in some of these other divisions, to turn pro. Bodybuilding is still the hardest division to turn pro at in the US and anywhere, I believe. In Canada, don't you still only the overall winner at the Canadians turns pro? Is that right?
Well, for bodybuilding open, but
yeah, one. So one bodybuilder turns pro at the Canadians a year. One male bodybuilder.
We have two now.
Oh, two.
Yeah, we do have two now.
Well, we have a masters. We have masters open. They have a masters pro card now, and then we have two guys. It's opening up a little bit. I think they said there's 16 pro cards handed out at nationals this year.
Yeah,
a whopping 16 pro cards.
Yeah, that's not my. I mean, you look at the flyers for like the USA or the nationals, and it'll say like 150 pro cards awarded or something like that. And even at our junior shows, we have like the junior USA, junior nationals. In a lot of the divisions, like I want to say like figure, bikini, men's physique, classic physique, the top two in every single class turn pro. Yeah. Every class, top two. So you didn't even have to win your class.
A, B, C, and D. Like I was looking at the classic from Masters Collegiate in like 45, 50, 55, 60, A, B, C, D. And even if you're in your class alone, so I'm 6'1", classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Figure goes up to like GHI or something. I mean, they do have like G and H class, I think, in some GH. There's so many classes.
You're in the class, doing pretty good.
I don't think there's much of a difference between Canadian bodybuilders and US bodybuilders. You guys are more polite for sure.
People say that, but
more humble. Like I don't see Ian or Bumstead or any of these guys like talking shit the way that some of these guys down here do. They just don't. They just let the physique do the talking.
I think the only real difference that I've felt as an IFBB pro in Canada is that like we're just a little bit more spaced out. Like our pros, like because we have a big country, with a population that's like one state, so we're kind of like spread out a lot more. So if you're like the pro in your province, like when I was in BC, it was like I was the only pro besides Big Ron there at West Coast, but he's on an active pro. So it's like if you're in BC, you might be the only pro. If you're in like Alberta, I don't think there's any pros in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. So a lot of us are in Ontario, but then even Ontario, it's like, like Ian's over there in Ottawa, and then everybody else is over here now in Burlington at Pure Muscle and Fitness. So like I moved here because I was tired of being, the big fish in the small pond. Like I want to be the small fish in the big pond because I want to be not comparing myself, but I want to be looking at guys that are doing what I want to do. Like, for example, Regan, he's been to the Olympia. Antoine, he's been to the Olympia. It's like Dorian's here. Everybody's here. So I came here so that I can be, around the energy that is, bigger than I am, right? So
sure.
I think that's the only difference. Because when I was in Tampa, it's like any gym you go to, there's going to be like guys that are bigger than you. It's just.
Yeah. I mean, even my gym, which is south of Boston, I'm not in the city of Boston. I'm a good 15 miles south. At one time we had around 10 pros in my gym. I think there's only some that have gone off to other gyms, but we have like 5 now still. And that's, you've never heard of any of them.
Yeah.
They turn pro, like I said, at these second place at this show or third, whatever. You're never gonna see these people, most of them even on a pro stage, but we give the pro cards away like candy, which is, that's why I'm so butthurt about not having a pro card myself, I guess. It's like, where's my pro card?
Makes sense.
I remember training at Bev's Powerhouse Gym. I went to New York just to train there. And everybody had, it was a Sunday morning, so all the older dudes were out. And they all had these belts, IFBB Pro Grandpa. I loved it. I mean, it was the best thing I had ever seen.
Grandpa. Yeah.
What a great gym. Like, you guys have some great gyms. Have you seen that Pure Fitness? Have you been there yet, Ron?
No, I haven't been to Toronto since the last Toronto Pro was 2019, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I didn't go to any gyms or anything, but hopefully that's Burlington. How far away is that from like downtown Toronto?
40 minutes.
It's very close to the airport.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Maybe I'll get a chance to check it out. Yeah, it looks awesome. Yeah.
I think personally it's one of the best environments for a Canadian bodybuilder to be in, just because of like what I mentioned. It's like all the best Canadian pros except for Ian are here. So it makes sense that if you want to get to that point, you train here where those guys are, right? So I think, a lot of Canadian bodybuilders, they were kind of like getting comfortable because they would be like the biggest guy in their gym. And a lot of guys, they would like, this is my gym, and, kind of take over that gym. But, I feel like, and I did that myself for a while, but now I realize that it's not really the way that I'm going to progress the most, because I'm not being challenged on a daily basis as much. So.
Yeah.
Can I gears? Because I had a question for Ron, and it kind of it's about how things have changed over the years. I have so many questions for Ron, because you've been with muscular development for, did you say 30 years?
No, I've been writing in the magazines for 20. I've been in the industry for 30 years. My first article was published in 92. My first muscular development article was published in 2001. So it's been 20 years with MD, 30 years in the industry total.
Unbelievable.
The first 8 years I was in the industry was television. Bodybuilding used to have a TV show on ESPN every month called American Muscle. Sometimes we called it American Muscle, sometimes we called it American Muscle Magazine, but it was a 1-hour show. It was magazine format. We had contest coverage. We had workouts, profiles, gossip, cooking, fashion. It was nuts. It was such a cool show.
What channel did they air that on?
It was ESPN, which is a major sports network.
Yeah, they used to put the Arnolds on there too, because ABC and I think it was CBC. I saw some Arnold stream.
Yeah. Oh, back in like the 70s and the 80s, the Olympia would be on NBC or ABC. Arnold Classic was on NBC at one time. We covered, so the company I worked for, we did the monthly show, but we also did event coverage. So we did the Olympia. We would do 1-hour specials for the Mr. Olympia, the Ms. Olympia, the USA Championships, the Arnold Classic. Yeah, we're never going to see that again. We're never going to see bodybuilding on television, on broadcast television ever again, I don't think. But we don't need to, because you have YouTube and you have everyone's got their own platform. It's unnecessary.
So
it was a real thing.
Has it evolved? Not the sport itself, but has it become more mainstream, or has it become less mainstream with the niche of the internet? Like it's funny, because I've read some articles about how the internet actually like segments little industries and little niche groups, but you don't realize it. Like from a bodybuilding perspective, we think, oh, bodybuilding is like gained so much popularity because we love bodybuilding and that's all we see on our feeds. But really, maybe in the 80s, 90s, maybe late 90s, it was more popular mainstream. But we tend to think it's more mainstream now because the kids aren't into it on social media. Or is it just because we're like looking at the social media we're looking at?
I think it's become more popular as a lifestyle or as an activity. You have a lot more people, I think, going to the gym with the goal of getting bigger or getting lean or whatever. But the vast majority of them have no interest in competitive bodybuilding. They don't want to know about it. They don't care. They have no interest in ever competing. But they want to make the gains and they want to put up their pictures on Instagram every day, and they're their deadlift videos, their one rep. Everyone's got the fucking 1 rep max deadlifts. Nuts. But if you look at bodybuilding back in the day, when I started going to contests in the late 80s, you'd go and see like a teenage class they'd have two, there were so many of them, they'd have split it up into 13 to 17 and 18 to 19. Just an example. And there'd be, 6 to 10 kids in the 13 to 17 and a dozen to 20 kids. This is just a local or regional show. Now, if you go to a contest, it's very rare you see one teenager because none of them want to be bodybuilders. I don't think people want to be bodybuilders anymore. They want to have abs. They want to have a little bit of muscle. Fitness influencers on YouTube and on Instagram, they're far more popular than most professional bodybuilders. You got these people, some of them with 10 million followers, and they have endorsements from 10, 12 different companies, and they're making awesome money. And all these so many pro bodybuilders are butthurt crying about it, saying, he doesn't even compete. He's never even been on stage. Why does he have all these followers? And why do people want to listen to him and buy his diet plan? And this, they don't understand. It's the whole social media is really what's changed obviously the whole world in general, but our sport or industry it's nothing like it used to be. I don't know if you're getting into the magazines. Magazines used to be everything.
Yeah.
That's the only connection we had to the pros back then. You'd see their pictures in the magazine and that was it. You never knew what they did for the other 364 days out of the year. Yeah, there you go. We get the cover with Ian.
The last one to own a magazine.
Yeah, we're the last print magazine, for God's sake.
I got my muscular development. I got an article in muscular development 2018 after I won my pro card. I still got that. Yeah.
What did I call it? Robin Hood or something? I can't remember.
It was from bulimia to bodybuilder, something like that.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when Tony Searle got his. When I started, getting competitive in bodybuilding, Tony Searle was in the magazines, and we went looking everywhere for that magazine. This was 2013, I think, or 2012, and we couldn't find the magazine anywhere. I think we ended up finding it out of Walmart or something, But that was at the ass end of it all, and no, it's funny because I remember growing up and getting the Arnold Encyclopedia and the old school Iron Man magazines and seeing those in my buddies' basements. Their dads had it. Yeah. I miss, maybe I'm just old. Maybe I'm just old and I miss it.
No, there's something special about having it in your hand. People wanted to be on the cover. That was a huge goal of a lot of bodybuilders. I want to be on the cover of a magazine because that's, that means somewhere in 1,000 miles away, some kid's going to be walking by a newsstand and see my picture on a magazine and like, wow, look at that dude. That dude's jacked. I want to start lifting weights and look like that dude because it's forever. That magazine, my God, yeah. I just had to start renting a storage facility because I literally have so many magazines. My basement is, God, it's like a fire hazard. They're all in plastic bins, but geez, 25, 30 years worth of magazines. Can you imagine?
Send me some. Yeah,
dude, there's so many of them.
Yeah, no.
That's cool though.
Before we started this podcast, I saw the development backdrop, and I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm being interviewed by Ron. I said, Ron, I feel like a celebrity today.
I try not to interview you guys. I'm trying to let you guys do all the questions.
Yeah, but Ron said it himself. I mean, it made sense. We're all celebrities now because of Instagram. That's where I came up with my name. I'm kind of a big deal because it's a play on, it's a joke.
Yeah.
We're all so grandiose and self-important, and nobody's really a big deal, but we're posting these millions of pictures and selfies and things. But other than Robin, because he's an IFBB pro, he's a big deal.
Well,
he's a big dude, that's for sure.
But I totally agree. Like, fitness is much more mainstream as a general industry, but open bodybuilding is much more niche now because the open bodybuilders are much bigger. Well, open bodybuilding is like a whole thing of its own now, right? So now that you got your 212, you got your classes, you got your men's physique, you've opened up this entire industry now. It is like the level of entry is much different now. So you can get in on any level depending on where you want to be. It's so different now.
I think one reason open bodybuilding has fallen off with this young generation is because it takes Forget about you need awesome genetics, you need drugs, but it does take time. You don't turn into you can't look like Robin in 6 months or a year. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't go from a regular person to that. I don't care what you do. It's not going to happen. It's going to take you a few years. And if you tell a 20-year-old kid now, he says, how long did it take you to look like that? If you tell them it's going to take you at least 10 years, they're like, oh, screw that. 10 years? My God. That's like forever. That's like 1,000 years when you're 19 or 20 years old, which is, why I think men's physique blew up, because you don't need to be that big for men's physique. You have some shoulders, some arms, a little tiny waist, some cool hair, you're good. But open bodybuilding, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of effort. The eating is ridiculous. You have to eat all damn day and night every day. You guys know it's just a lot of work.
Do it all when you prep, or you're part of it. This is what the kids don't understand: instant gratification. We are in a generation of instant gratification, and these kids just want everything given to them. This is not something. What's funny is that back in the day, before social media, Ron, I don't think we quite realized what we were getting into, right?
No, nobody did. Nobody saw. Who could have predicted what, like Instagram and YouTube, how what they would have become, how incredibly popular, how they would create celebrities. And it's not everything's got its good and bad. I mean, social media and YouTube, they've opened up so many more opportunities. The magazines were great, but they were very exclusive, meaning you had to usually go out to California and hang around Gold's Venice and get to photographers to notice you, or the magazine publishers. It was a pain in the ass, and it was very tough to get into the magazines back then. And you were at their mercy, basically, who they decide to put on their cover, who they decide to feature. Now, if you're a good-looking guy with a good physique, or especially if you're a good-looking girl with a big butt or something, you can make your own. You can make your own celebrity. You can create websites and pages and channels and get all kinds of money coming in and fans, and you don't have to depend on anybody else to notice you or to give you opportunity. You can make your own opportunity now. So as much as we want to bitch about somebody who's never competed and that guy doesn't even have legs or a back, and why is he, I have a better physique than him, whatever. These people are hustling, they're making it happen. And that's just the way the world is now. You can't complain about how the world's changed. It's going to keep changing.
And why wouldn't you? Like, if you can make money online, if you can have a second business besides what you do from 9 to 5, why wouldn't you? Right? It's
right.
Like, this is an expensive sport. You got to pay for it somehow. You still have bills to pay too. So I see it as a good thing. I think it's awesome that people can now make a business out of like Instagram, make a business online, and have, like, for myself, I love it. I have clients in Sweden. I have clients in New Zealand, Australia. It's like, that would never be possible without social media. So I think it's a really cool thing. I have a question for you, Ron. What do you think, if I'm a young female or male competitor, let's say I'm 18 or 19 or even like 21, 22, 23, 24, and I want to get into bodybuilding. I want to be a bodybuilder, whether it's women's bodybuilder, men's bodybuilder. Would you recommend that I start competing as a men's physique or a classic and work my way up? Or would you recommend that I just take my time and build that, mass that I need, and then compete as an open bodybuilder, try to win my pro card, later down the road?
Take your time and wait until you have the mass to be compared to the other open bodybuilders. Because if you start out in a physically smaller division, there's a good chance you're going to get stuck there, because you'll win a show, maybe you'll win a show, you'll do well at it, and you'll think, I could just keep doing this, and I'm getting a lot of attention and rewards for doing this. Why am I going to try to keep getting any bigger than this? I think it'll distract you from your purpose, from your end goal. You don't see too many people who start out in physique end up in open bodybuilding. It's very, very rare.
What about exceptions like Chris Bumstead? Like, Chris came into open, and he at the pro ranks, he recognized that his physique was really suited for classic, and he could tap that out or max that out, that physique, and not have to transition into bodybuilding for whatever reasons Chris has, whether it be health or whether it be wealth. What about the kid who can get into the division that's best suited for them and it's a good division for them, and they have that look, and they just should, like, would you say the opposite pertains to them? Like, it's not the same thing. It's not a one size fits all, right?
Oh, I think everyone, we have all these divisions, and there's, they call it something for everyone, because there is, bottom line is you have to have great genetics to succeed in any division.
Yeah.
Any division. Every division is basically a bigger or smaller version of the same person. You have to have wide clavicles and a small waist and long muscle bellies. It's not like there's any division that's going to reward bad genetics. It's not. So it comes down to, if you have a really, really small waist and you want to keep it small, men's physique is probably a good option for you. If you want to be a little bigger, classic physique could be a good option. If you don't have the smallest waist, maybe I've seen a lot of guys compensate by just piling on tons of muscle mass and going into open bodybuilding. Most of them don't do very well at the high level because, again, the genetic cream always rises to the top, no matter who we're talking about or what division. But yeah, if you're suited for men's physique or classic physique, by all means. And, I see a lot of people trying to go into classic that have no business being in classic. There's nothing pretty or aesthetic or classic looking about their physique. They're just, Boston Lloyd calls them failed bodybuilders, because they wanted to be bodybuilders, but they couldn't put the size on to do well in bodybuilding. So they figure, well, I'm 5'9", I can make the height and weight, I'll just do classic. And they usually don't do very well in classic either, because just because you fit into a height and weight parameter, that's like saying, Dexter was 5'6", let's say 230 pounds. That's probably his best weight. Say he was 225, 230. How many people have come into contests at 5'6" and 225 or 30 pounds who looked nothing like Dexter Jackson? Right. None of them did. Yeah. So yeah, find the division. I'd say find the division that suits you, that you really want to. Because if you want to be an open bodybuilder, it takes a special breed of crazy to go after that, because it's a lot of work. It's more work than all the other divisions. I'm sorry to say. I don't want to insult anybody, but it's more food, it's more gear. You have to be on to gain that amount of ungodly mass. It's a lot more work. It just is.
I always say, like, from a coaching perspective, if I have people who ask me what division I think that they should do, my question is always, what division do you like the most? Or what is your passion? Where do you want to be? And if they say, I want to be an open bodybuilder, I say, okay, then do open bodybuilding. Don't bother with men's physique or classic, because like you were saying, Ron, like, you're going to kind of shift your mindset to fit that division, right? And, your physique will go where your energy goes. So if your energy continually goes into that men's physique or classic division, then that's where you'll end up, and you're going to kind of shortchange your long-term gains. But yeah, I think it is hard because it does take longer to get into that open division. But again, if that's where you want to be, then that's where you have to focus. You just have to bide your time and just, hey, that's why we have less open bodybuilders now, right? Because there's many options now. So
absolutely. Yeah. Dorian Yates said the talent pool is getting diluted. He said this years ago. Yeah. It really is. It really is. But it is what it is.
All right.
We're running pretty late. I don't know how much time Ron has here. Maybe I have 1,000,001 questions I still want to ask Ron, but
that's a lot.
I mean, it would be interesting to know, like, who you respect the most in the industry, who your favorite person you've interviewed was. I mean, I have 1,000,001 questions just about bodybuilding journal. How do you become a bodybuilding journalist? I have so many questions, but I don't know if we're going to have time to scratch them all. And they're really, not important questions, but maybe I'll ask you on your spare time, Ron, but
have me on again someday.
Yeah, that I think we need a continuation is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, let's do one more question each for Ron. How's that?
Okay, Robin, let's do that. We all need to eat our cream of rice.
My question, because we were talking about this, was, should an athlete who wants to be a bodybuilder, let's just rephrase that. If I'm an athlete and I want to be a competitive physique athlete in any class, should I focus mainly on that and leave my social media for when I get, a couple, when I get my feet wet and when I get a little better physique, or should I try to simultaneously build my social media and build my physique?
I would say if you have a physique that's worth looking at now, not to say it's your final form, but if it's something where you think people would be interested to follow your journey, then by all means build your social media at the same time, because you need social media now. It's so critical in 2021 going to 2022. It's important for everybody. It's not the old days where you could hide away in your dungeon and like Dorian did and just pop up once a year to compete. Social media is how you have your online clients find out who you are, companies that you might want to have sponsor you or endorse you. There's so many opportunities that you'd be missing if you weren't on social media. At the same time, if you're like a 98-pound weakling, I don't want to follow your journey because you're not going to look like anything for another couple of years. So it kind of all depends. If you honestly believe people would be interested in what you have to say, what you're doing, and your progress, if you have something to offer in terms of content, amusement, information, whatever, by all means do it. I don't think it's possible to just hide away anymore. You'd be missing out.
So if you're someone that can provide some type of value to others, then yes, do both simultaneously. But if you're not quite there yet, just focus on you and the social media will come.
Sure. Yeah. Paul.
No, I'm going to table my questions for our next podcast, Ron.
Fair enough.
I want to have you back on, and I want to give them some incentive to get them back on Canadian beef. And maybe we can have a panel next time, Robin, get some more guys from HG.
Sure, yeah, we get anybody.
Ron, would there be anyone in particular you'd like to get in on a podcast with?
I mean, Antoine's cool as hell.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Is Antoine not training with you this week?
Yep, I'm going to train with him on Friday.
Oh, there you go.
Have you seen the leg workout video, Ron?
No, I'm aware of his legs being enormous, though. Yeah. Honestly, I don't look at a lot of training videos anymore. It's not out of being a snob or anything. It just has no relevance to me.
Yeah.
My training I'm so banged up. My training is so individually tailored to my own needs and limitations. It's not like I can watch that and like, oh, I'm going to do that workout tomorrow. I can't.
Yeah, agreed.
So,
The thing about aging is you can't really have a training partner anymore.
Nope.
Because they're doing things and you're like, oh, no, I can't do that specific exercise because I'm missing this. Or I can't do this because I have pains there. And you feel like you're wussing out, but it's actually a physical barrier. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I say I can't deadlift, I can't deadlift. Yeah. It's not that I don't want to deadlift or I don't, I physically cannot deadlift. So if I'm training with a young strapping guy like Robin, I would just be holding him back because he's doing like a back day. He would want to do barbell rows. He want to do deadlifts. I can't do chin ups, my shoulder, it'd be, the whole thing would be like, oh, you do that. I can't do that. So yeah, I'm good. But, I'm very grateful to still be able to work around all the injuries and still get good workouts and still hold a good amount of muscle size. I'm very, very grateful because I run into all these people my age say, I used to look like you, or I used to work out. I'm like, well, why'd you stop? You couldn't do anything. You can't do anything at all. You can't go, you can't do machines. You can't do anything. They just give up. I'm never giving up. I've been training. This will be 38 years of training next month. I could never stop. Never. I'd never want to stop.
Okay. One last question.
Sure.
Is it, do you think it's a neurosis? Like, is it like a mental disorder almost to a point where, because I'm with you too, like,
yeah.
I will never stop training no matter what costs. I think I cannot stop training. It's become my zen, like my place, as Tom Platz would call it, it's my church. The gym is my church.
Yeah.
And the rack is my altar, right? Like, is that some, do you think that's some form of neurosis, or do you think it's a perfectly healthy response to getting stress out?
Oh, I think it's perfectly healthy. It's a great way to relieve stress. It's obviously it's good. Training is good in so many different aspects. I think it does take on an unhealthy aspect. At the level that we're at, it's probably not healthy because, I'm like, oh my God, I need to eat in 10 minutes. A normal person isn't freaking out because they need to eat at 3:30. They're not freaking out because, oh my God, I'm supposed to go to the gym tomorrow, but it's my wife's only day off. And the beach days are, oh no, I'm going to miss a workout. And we take it to a level of obsession, but that's also the mark of somebody who's very successful at it. That's why we're doing it at a higher level than most people that just go to the gym, because we are that meticulous and we are that obsessed. I like that phrase. Obsession is a word the lazy use to describe the dedicated.
Mm-hmm.
But,
very good.
But you could call it dedicated. You could call it obsessed. It's a slippery slope there as to how to define it. But, you're not hurting anybody else, and hopefully you're not hurting yourself, then it's all good.
I think as long as you, like you mentioned, Ron, like as long as you're maintaining an attitude of gratitude, the fact that you can go to the gym, it's not like, oh, I have to go to the gym today. I have to eat meals. Like I get to go to the gym today. I'm so grateful that my body shows up for me today. I'm so grateful that I have access to good food and clean water and all this kind of stuff. So I think, there's a healthy way to look at it and there's an unhealthy way to look at it. But
absolutely.
But with that being said, Ron, thank you so much for your time today. That was actually really awesome that we got to catch up a little bit and got some really good chats in today. So looking forward to another episode. Is there anything that you want to say before we head off?
No, I just want to plug the MD, musculardevelopment.com, the website, and of course the YouTube channel, Muscular Development. I got all kinds of videos on there. I do a lot of videos. Giles Thomas does MD Global Muscle, great channel. And the print magazine's still there. Get information on that at the website, musculardevelopment.com. We still have a forum. Yeah. We still have a magazine, guys. We still have a magazine. We're the last ones. So yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. And last thing before we head out, just want to say thank you to our sponsors, Gorilla Wear Canada. If you want to, at Gorilla Wear Canada and Helix Farms, if you guys want to pick up some Gorilla Wear clothes or some Helix Farms, we're going to drop the link below in the description. And you can use the code BEEF20, that's capital BEEF 20, get 20% off on those websites. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Canadian Beef signing out.
Canadian Beef.